Pine Hollow, Missouri, December 1880. The wanted poster went up on the Mercantile wall at dawn, and by the time Molly Walsh unlocked her seamstress shop that morning, half the town had already seen it. The face on that poster looked exactly like Josiah Hawkins, the quiet vaquero who had drifted into Pine Hollow 3 weeks earlier and taken work at the Carver Ranch breaking horses. Molly had met him only twice, once when he brought his torn vest for mending, and once when he tipped his hat to her outside the general store. But she remembered his eyes, careful and kind, and the way he spoke with a patience that did not match the violence described on that poster. The law was thin in Pine Hollow. Just one part-time deputy who spent more time drunk than sober, and the nearest marshal was 2 days' ride away. That poster said the man was wanted for robbery and murder across 3 territories. It said he was armed and extremely dangerous. It said there was a $500 reward. By mid-morning, the town was buzzing with fear and speculation. Molly stood in her shop doorway, watching Josiah walk down the main street toward the livery, his head down and his shoulders tight. She saw the way people stepped back, the way mothers pulled their children inside. She saw Basil Lockhart, the gunsmith, standing outside his shop with his arms crossed and a cold smile on his face. Basil had been courting Molly for months, bringing her flowers and expensive fabric, refusing to accept her polite rejections. He was loud and entitled, always making a show of his generosity, and lately his attention had turned possessive. Molly had started avoiding him, but that only seemed to make him more determined. Now Basil was staring at Josiah with a look that made her stomach tighten. That evening, Molly closed her shop early and walked to the edge of town where the Carver Ranch hands gathered. She found Josiah sitting alone on a corral fence, watching the horses.
Mr. Hawkins, I need to speak with you.
He turned, surprise flickering across his face, then climbed down from the fence.
Miss Walsh, is something wrong?
That poster. Everyone is saying it is you.
He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly.
It looks like me. I will not lie about that. But it is not me.
I believe you.
His eyes widened slightly.
Why?
Because I saw your face when you brought your vest to me. You were embarrassed about the tear. A man who robs and kills does not worry about a torn vest.
A faint smile touched his mouth, sad and grateful.
I appreciate that, Miss Walsh. But belief will not matter much if a mob decides otherwise.
Then we need to find out who that man really is.
Josiah shook his head.
We? No. You should stay far away from this. If people think you are helping me, they will turn on you too.
I am not afraid of gossip.
You should be afraid of worse than gossip. That poster went up for a reason. Someone wants me blamed.
Before Molly could respond, a shout echoed from the direction of town. They both turned. A woman was screaming. Josiah moved immediately, running toward the sound, and Molly lifted her skirts and followed. They reached the main street to find a crowd gathering outside the schoolhouse. The teacher, Miss Brennan, was crying and clutching the deputy's arm. Her voice shook. The children were playing outside during afternoon recess, and when she called them back inside, 7-year-old Emma Carver was gone. The deputy, a red-faced man named Fuller, looked around helplessly. He muttered something about organizing a search party, but his hands were shaking. Molly saw Basil Lockhart push through the crowd. His voice was loud and commanding. He pointed at Josiah. Everyone knows what kind of man he is. That poster says robbery and murder, Why not kidnapping too? The crowd murmured, angry and frightened. Josiah stood very still, his expression calm, but his jaw tight.
I have been at the ranch all day. Mr. Carver can confirm that.
But Basil was not finished. He stepped closer, his face flushed. He said maybe Carver was covering for him. Maybe they were in on it together. The crowd grew louder. Molly pushed forward.
This is nonsense. Emma Carver is missing, and you are wasting time pointing fingers. We should be searching for her.
Basil turned his cold eyes on her. He said softly that she should be careful about defending criminals, that people might start wondering about her judgment. The threat was clear. Molly felt anger rise in her chest. But before she could reply, Josiah spoke.
Miss Walsh is right. The child is what matters. If you want to search, I will help. If you want to lock me up while you search, do that. But do not waste time arguing.
Deputy Fuller looked relieved to have a direction. He said they would search the town first, then spread out to the surrounding fields and woods. He told Josiah to stay where people could see him. Basil looked furious, but said nothing. The crowd began to break apart, organizing into search groups. Molly stayed close to Josiah as they moved toward the edge of town.
You should have stayed quiet. Now they will watch you even more carefully.
They were already watching. At least this way I can help.
They searched until dark, calling Emma's name through the empty fields and along the frozen creek beds. The temperature was dropping fast, and frost glittered on the dead grass. Molly's hands were numb inside her thin gloves. Josiah moved steadily, methodical and focused, checking every shed and hollow. As night fell, the searchers returned to town, cold and frightened. There was no sign of Emma Carver. Her parents stood outside the schoolhouse, the mother weeping, and the father pale with terror. Deputy Fuller announced they would resume at first light. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispering and casting dark looks at Josiah. Molly walked beside him toward the livery where he had been sleeping in the loft.
You should leave. Tonight. Before this gets worse.
I cannot leave while that child is missing.
They will blame you no matter what happens.
Maybe. But I will know the truth.
She stopped walking and turned to face him.
Why does your truth matter so much?
He looked at her, his dark eyes shadowed in the dim light from the distant lanterns.
Because I have spent 2 years running from a name and a reputation that were not mine. I am tired of running.
Before she could ask more, a sound cut through the cold air. A child's cry, faint and distant, coming from the direction of the river. They both froze, listening. The cry came again. Josiah grabbed a lantern from the livery wall and ran. Molly followed, her skirts catching on frozen brush as they plunged down the slope toward the Missouri River. The sound grew louder, a child's terrified sobbing. They crashed through the underbrush and emerged on the riverbank. The water was high and fast, swollen from early winter rains. 20 feet from shore, clinging to a half-submerged log, was Emma Carver. Her lips were blue, and her small hands were slipping. Josiah did not hesitate. He shoved the lantern into Molly's hands, pulled off his vest and boots, and waded into the freezing current. Molly held the lantern high, her heart pounding, watching him fight the current. The water reached his chest, then his shoulders. He reached the log and grabbed Emma, pulling her against him. The child wrapped her arms around his neck, but the current was too strong. Josiah lost his footing and went under. Molly screamed. He surfaced, gasping, still holding Emma. He fought toward shore, dragging himself and the child inch by inch through the freezing water. Molly dropped the lantern and waded in, reaching for them. Her hands closed on Josiah's arm, and she pulled with all her strength. They staggered onto the bank together, collapsing in the frozen mud. Emma was shaking violently, but alive. Josiah lay on his back, coughing water, his chest heaving. Molly pulled off her shawl and wrapped it around the child, then knelt beside Josiah.
Can you stand?
He nodded, still gasping. She helped him sit up. His skin was ice cold. She could hear shouts from the direction of town. The searchers had heard her scream. Within minutes, lanterns appeared through the trees. Emma's parents arrived first. Her mother fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching the child. Her father stared at Josiah, then at the river, understanding dawning on his face. Deputy Fuller and the others arrived, Basil Lockhart among them. The gunsmith's expression was dark. Someone asked what had happened. Emma's father explained, his voice shaking, that the vaquero had saved his daughter. He said Josiah had risked his life without hesitation. The crowd murmured, uncertain now. Basil stepped forward. He said loudly that it was convenient, that maybe Josiah had taken the girl in the first place and staged a rescue to clear his name. Emma's mother turned on him, her face furious. She said her daughter had wandered away chasing a stray dog, that she had fallen into the river trying to reach it. She said this man, this good man, had saved Emma's life while the rest of them stood around, pointing fingers. Basil's face flushed red. He insisted the wanted poster proved Josiah was dangerous. Emma's father looked at the poster someone was holding, then at Josiah. He said slowly that the face was similar, but not the same. He pointed out differences, the shape of the nose, the set of the eyes, details that became clear when you looked closely instead of in fear. Others began to nod, seeing it now. Deputy Fuller scratched his head. He muttered that he supposed they should wire the marshal and get it sorted out proper. But Basil was not done. He moved closer to Josiah, his hand resting on the gun at his belt. He said there was still the matter of proof, that a man's word was not enough. His tone was threatening. Molly stepped between them.
Basil Lockhart, you have been looking for an excuse to cause trouble since that poster went up. Everyone can see it.
Basil's eyes went cold. He said she was a fool to defend a criminal, that her reputation would be ruined.
My reputation is my concern, not yours.
His hand tightened on his gun. For a moment, Molly thought he might actually draw. Then, Emma's father stepped forward, and two other ranch hands moved to stand beside Josiah. The moment broke. Basil stepped back, his face twisted with anger. He said this was not over. Then he turned and stalked away toward town. The crowd began to disperse, some people apologizing to Josiah, others still uncertain. Emma's parents thanked him again, their gratitude overwhelming. They offered to take him to their house to warm up, but Josiah politely refused. He said he would be fine at the livery. Molly walked with him back toward town, both of them shivering in the cold.
You need dry clothes and a fire. The livery is not good enough.
I will manage.
you will freeze. Come to my shop. I have a stove, and I can lend you a blanket while your clothes dry.
He looked at her, hesitant.
People will talk.
Let them.
They walked to her shop, a small wooden building with a painted sign and 2 front windows. Inside, it smelled of fabric and lavender. Molly lit the stove and hung a blanket to give him privacy while he changed out of his wet clothes. She found a wool blanket and a spare shirt that had been left for mending, too large for most men, but close to Josiah's size. When he emerged, wrapped in the blanket and wearing the dry shirt, she made tea from her small supply, and they sat near the stove. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Josiah looked at her.
Why are you helping me?
Because it is the right thing to do.
You could have stayed out of it. Let the town decide.
The town was wrong.
He smiled faintly.
You are stubborn.
So are you. You could have left before the search.
I told you. I am tired of running.
She studied him over her teacup.
What happened? Why does that poster look like you?
He was silent for a moment, staring at the stove. Then, he spoke.
2 years ago, I worked on a ranch in Colorado. The owner's son was a gambler and a drunk. He got into debt with some dangerous men. One night, they came to the ranch looking for him. There was a fight. A man was killed. The son fled. The men swore revenge. Someone put up a wanted poster with a face that looked like the son. But the son and I, we had similar builds, similar coloring. People started mistaking me for him. The law came looking. I tried to explain, but the son was gone, and no one believed me. So I ran. I have been running ever since, changing my name, moving from town to town.
Josiah Hawkins is not your real name?
He shook his head.
My real name is Diego Ruiz. Josiah Hawkins is just the latest version.
Molly set down her teacup.
And the real wanted man? The ranch owner's son?
I do not know. Maybe dead. Maybe still running.
So, you have been paying for his crimes.
Yes.
She felt a surge of anger on his behalf.
That is not justice.
No. But it is how the world works sometimes.
They sat in silence for a while. Then, Molly stood.
We need to prove you are innocent. Not just to this town, but to everyone.
How?
By finding out who put up that poster and why. Someone wanted you blamed for Emma's disappearance. That means someone knows the truth about who you really are.
Josiah looked at her, surprised.
You think it was deliberate?
Basil Lockhart has been acting strangely since you arrived. He has money and influence. He could have gotten that poster.
Why would he do that?
I do not know. But I intend to find out.
Over the next 2 days, Molly asked careful questions around town. She learned that Basil had received a package from a freight office in Kansas City the week before the poster appeared. She learned that he had been asking about Josiah, where he came from, where he worked. She learned that Basil had recently lost a large sum of money in a card game and was desperate to recover it. On the 3rd day, she found Josiah at the Carver Ranch.
I need you to come with me. Now.
He set down the bridle he had been mending.
What did you find?
Basil has a locked room in the back of his gunsmith shop. No one is allowed inside. I think that is where he keeps his records.
Molly, We cannot break into his shop.
We are not going to break in. We are going to get invited.
She explained her plan. That evening, Molly walked into the gunsmith shop, her expression nervous. Basil looked up from his workbench, surprised and pleased. He greeted her warmly.
Basil, I owe you an apology. I was harsh the other night. I have been thinking about what you said.
His eyes lit up. He said he was glad she had come to her senses, that she was too smart to waste her time on drifters. He offered her tea. She accepted. While Basil boiled water on his small stove, Molly glanced toward the back room. The door was closed, a heavy padlock visible. Basil brought her tea and sat close, too close. He began talking about their future together, about how he could provide for her, how she would never have to work again. Molly forced herself to smile and nod. Then she stood.
I should go. It is getting late.
Basil stood too, reaching for her hand. He said she could stay longer, that he wanted to show her something. He moved toward the back room. Molly's heart pounded. This was her chance. But before Basil could unlock the door, the front door of the shop burst open. Josiah stood in the doorway.
Miss Walsh, your shop is on fire.
Molly gasped and ran toward the door. Basil cursed and followed. They rushed into the street. A thin column of smoke was rising from the direction of Molly's shop. People were shouting and running with buckets. Basil hesitated, then followed the crowd, unable to resist the spectacle. The moment he was gone, Josiah grabbed Molly's arm.
It is just wet straw and green wood. It will smoke, but not burn. We have maybe 5 minutes.
They ran back into the gunsmith shop. Josiah pulled a pry bar from Basil's workbench and forced the padlock. The door swung open. Inside was a small office with a desk and filing cabinet. Josiah rifled through papers while Molly checked the desk drawers. She found a stack of correspondence, bills, receipts. Then she found a telegram. It was dated 2 weeks earlier, from an associate in Kansas City. The telegram described a bounty hunter looking for a man matching Josiah's description, wanted for crimes in Colorado. It gave instructions for delivering information and claimed the reward was $500. Molly held it up.
This is it. Basil was planning to turn you in for the reward money.
Josiah found more papers, contracts for selling faulty ammunition to outlaws passing through. One note mentioned staged accidents. Another listed names of men who had died from gun misfires. Josiah folded them and shoved them into his coat.
Enough to hang him twice over. We need to get out before the smoke clears.
They stepped out of the office, just as voices shouted from the front of the building. The smoke was thinning. Boots thundered on the boardwalk. Josiah grabbed Molly's hand and pulled her toward the back door. They burst into the alley as the front door crashed open behind them. Men were shouting. Someone yelled about thieves. Josiah and Molly ran down the alley, turned the corner, and ducked behind a stack of crates near the livery. They pressed flat against the wall, breathing hard. Footsteps pounded past.
They will search the whole town. We cannot stay here.
The church. No one will look there this early.
They slipped through the shadows and crossed the empty street. The church stood at the far end of town, a small white building with a narrow steeple. The door was unlocked. Inside it was dark and cold. Rows of wooden pews lined the aisle. A single candle burned near the altar. Molly led Josiah to the back corner behind the last pew. They crouched low and waited. Outside, voices called back and forth. Lanterns swung past the windows. Molly pressed close to Josiah, her heart hammering. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders.
When it is quiet, we go to the sheriff. Show him everything.
What if he does not believe us? What if Basil has already told him you are the wanted man?
Then we ride. But we try first.
They waited an hour. The voices faded. The town settled into uneasy silence. Josiah stood and helped Molly to her feet. They walked to the front of the church and peered through the window. The street was empty except for a single figure standing outside the sheriff's office. It was Basil. He was talking to two men. One wore a deputy's badge. The other was tall and wore a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. A bounty hunter. Molly's stomach dropped.
He brought someone.
Then we go now. No more waiting.
Josiah pushed the church door open and stepped into the street. Molly followed. Basil turned and saw them. His face twisted with rage. He pointed. The bounty hunter drew his gun. Josiah raised his hands.
I am not the man you are looking for.
The bounty hunter walked closer, his gun leveled. He studied Josiah's face. He looked at the wanted poster the deputy held. Then he shook his head. The bounty hunter holstered his weapon and spoke quietly to the deputy. The deputy nodded. Basil shouted, his voice breaking. He insisted it was him, demanded they arrest Josiah immediately. The bounty hunter ignored him and walked away. The deputy stepped forward and told Basil to calm down, or he would spend the night in a cell. Basil cursed and lunged toward Josiah. The deputy grabbed him by the collar and shoved him back. Josiah pulled the folded papers from his coat and handed them to the deputy.
Read these. He has been selling bad ammunition and collecting bounties on innocent men.
The deputy unfolded the papers and scanned them. His expression darkened. He looked at Basil. The deputy ordered Basil to come with him. Basil refused. He swung a fist at the deputy. The deputy ducked and struck Basil in the stomach. Basil doubled over. The deputy dragged him toward the office. Basil screamed threats. He swore he would make them pay. The deputy locked him inside. Molly let out a long breath. Josiah lowered his hands. The deputy came back outside and nodded to them. He told them they were free to go, thanked them for the evidence, and said the circuit judge would be through in 2 weeks to handle the trial. Josiah thanked him. Molly gripped Josiah's hand. They walked back toward the boarding house. The sky was pale gray now, the stars fading. A few people were starting to move in the streets, opening shutters and sweeping porches. Molly felt exhausted, but lighter. The weight that had pressed on her chest for weeks was gone. When they reached the boarding house, Josiah stopped.
I should leave. The boy is safe. Your name is clear. I have no reason to stay.
You have every reason.
She stepped closer.
You think I want you to go? After everything?
You have a life here. A business. People who know you. I am a drifter. I bring trouble.
You brought the truth. You brought justice. You brought that child home. And you brought yourself. That is what matters.
Josiah looked at her for a long moment. His expression softened.
I am not good at staying.
Then, learn.
She reached up and touched his face. He closed his eyes.
I do not deserve you.
You do not get to decide that. I do.
He opened his eyes and looked at her. Then he smiled, slow and real.
You are stubborn.
Yes.
He kissed her. Molly leaned into him, her arms around his neck. The street was waking around them, but she did not care. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling.
Stay.
I will stay.
They walked inside together. Molly's landlady was in the kitchen making coffee. She looked up and raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Molly led Josiah upstairs to her small room. It was plain, with a narrow bed, a sewing table by the window, and shelves stacked with fabric and thread. Josiah looked around.
It suits you.
It is small, but it is mine.
She poured water from the pitcher into a basin and washed her hands and face. Josiah did the same. They sat together on the edge of the bed. Molly leaned her head on his shoulder.
What will you do now?
Find work. There is always work for a man who knows horses. Maybe start over. Use my real name.
What is your real name?
Josiah Reyes.
Josiah Reyes. I like it.
She smiled. He took her hand.
And you?
I will keep sewing. Keep building. Maybe expand the shop. Maybe hire help.
Maybe marry a vaquero.
She looked up at him, surprised. He was grinning.
Maybe. If he asks properly.
I will work on that.
She laughed. They sat in the quiet for a while, the morning light growing warmer through the window. Then Molly stood and pulled him to his feet.
Come on. We need to eat. And then we need to check on the boy.
They went downstairs. The landlady had set out bread and butter and coffee. Molly and Josiah ate quickly, then walked back across town to the Calloway house. Emma answered the door. Her face was pale, but she smiled when she saw them. She told them Daniel was still asleep, but the doctor had come and said he would be fine. Just cold and tired. Emma thanked them again, her voice breaking. Molly hugged her.
He is home. That is what matters.
Emma nodded and wiped her eyes. She invited them in for tea, but Molly declined gently. She and Josiah needed rest. They walked back through town slowly. People were out now, going about their day. A few nodded to them. One man tipped his hat. Word was spreading. Molly felt the town's eyes on them, but it was different now. Not suspicion. Respect. When they reached the boarding house again, Molly stopped.
I need to go to the shop. Check the orders. Make sure everything is in order.
I will come with you.
They walked to the small building where Molly kept her sewing business. It was a single room with a large table, shelves of fabric, and a dress form in the corner. Molly unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything was as she had left it. She ran her hand over the table.
This is where I rebuilt. After everything fell apart.
What fell apart?
Molly hesitated. Then she told him about her brother, who had stolen money from their family business and framed her father. About the trial that ruined them. About her father's death in prison and her mother's grief that followed. About coming to Pine Hollow alone with nothing but her sewing skills and a single trunk.
I was so angry. For years, I wanted revenge. I wanted to find my brother and make him pay. But I realized it would destroy me. So I let it go. I built this instead.
That takes strength.
Or stubbornness.
Both.
She smiled. Josiah walked around the room, looking at the shelves and the bolts of fabric. He stopped at the window.
You could do well here. Grow this.
I plan to.
And I will help. If you let me.
I will let you.
They stayed in the shop for a while, talking quietly. Molly showed him the orders she was working on, the dresses and shirts she had promised to finish. Josiah asked questions, listened, learned. When the afternoon light started to fade, they locked up and walked back. That evening they had dinner at the boarding house with the other tenants. The landlady served stew and cornbread. People asked questions about the boy and the gunsmith. Molly answered calmly. Josiah stayed quiet, but his presence was steady beside her. After dinner, they sat on the porch. The night was cold and clear. Stars filled the sky. Molly wrapped her shawl tighter. Josiah put his arm around her.
I was afraid of this.
Of what?
Of wanting to stay. Of caring.
Why is that frightening?
Because I lose things. Everyone I have cared about, I have lost.
You have not lost me.
Not yet.
Not ever.
She turned to face him.
I am not going anywhere. And neither are you. We are building something. Together.
I am not used to that.
Then, get used to it.
He laughed quietly. Then he kissed her again, slow and gentle. When they pulled apart, Molly rested her forehead against his.
Promise me you will stay.
I promise.
They sat together until the cold drove them inside. Molly went to her room. Josiah stayed downstairs in the parlor, sleeping on the couch. The landlady had offered him a room, but he said he would find his own place soon. Molly did not argue. She knew he needed time. The next few days passed quietly. Josiah found work at the livery, tending horses and repairing tech. Molly worked in her shop, finishing orders and taking new ones. In the evenings they walked together, talking and planning. The town slowly accepted them. Daniel recovered and went back to school. Emma invited them for Sunday dinner. The deputy stopped by the shop to thank Molly again for the evidence. Basil Lockhart was still in the cell, awaiting trial. A week after the night they found Daniel, Molly closed the shop early and walked to the livery. Josiah was brushing down a bay mare. He looked up when she came in.
Finished early?
I wanted to see you.
Good timing. I just finished.
He set the brush aside and walked over to her. She took his hand.
Come with me.
Where?
You will see.
She led him out of town, following the wagon trail south toward the river. The air was crisp, and the sky was streaked with orange and pink. They walked in comfortable silence. When they reached the riverbank, Molly stopped. The water was low and slow, reflecting the sunset. The trees along the bank were bare, their branches dark against the sky. Molly turned to Josiah.
This is where I come when I need to think. when I need to remember why I stayed.
It is beautiful.
It is home.
She looked at him.
I want you to feel that too. I want you to know that you belong here. With me.
I do.
Good.
She stepped closer and took both his hands.
I love you, Josiah Reyes.
He stared at her, his eyes wide. Then he pulled her close and kissed her hard. When he pulled back, he was smiling.
I love you too, Molly Walsh.
They stood together by the river, the town behind them, the sky turning dark. Molly felt the weight of the past lift completely. She had lost so much. Her family, her name, her home. But she had found something better. She had found him. And she had found herself. Josiah wrapped his arms around her and held her close.
I will build you a house. Right here, by the river, with windows facing the water.
Will you now?
Yes, and a workshop for your sewing, and a stable for my horses.
That sounds like a plan.
It is a promise.
Molly laughed and kissed him again. The stars were coming out now, bright and cold. The river murmured softly. In the distance, the lights of Pine Hollow glowed warm against the dark. They turned and walked back together, hand in hand, their future stretching out before them like the open sky. When they reached the edge of town, Josiah stopped.
I have something for you.
He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. He handed it to her. Molly opened it. Inside was a silver ring, simple and plain.
It was my mother's. The only thing I kept.
Josiah.
I want you to have it. I want you to wear it.
Molly's eyes filled with tears. She slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly.
I will never take it off.
Good.
They walked back into town together. People were closing up shops and heading home. A few waved. Molly waved back. She felt lighter than she had in years. When they reached the boarding house, the landlady was on the porch. She looked at them and smiled. She told them there was stew on the stove if they were hungry. Molly thanked her. She and Josiah went inside and sat at the table. They ate slowly, talking quietly. The landlady brought them coffee and left them alone. After they finished, they went upstairs. Molly led Josiah to her room. She closed the door behind them.
Stay with me tonight.
Are you sure?
I am sure.
He nodded. They lay down together on the narrow bed, fully clothed, wrapped in each other's arms. Molly rested her head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. It was steady and strong.
I was so afraid I would never find this.
Find what?
This. You. Love.
I was afraid of the same thing.
We found it.
We did.
They fell asleep like that, tangled together, safe and warm. Outside, the wind picked up and rattled the windows. The first frost was coming. But inside, in the small room above the boarding house, everything was warm. The next morning, Molly woke to sunlight streaming through the window. Josiah was still asleep beside her, his arm around her waist. She lay still for a moment, savoring the warmth and the quiet. Then she carefully slipped out of bed and went to the window. The street below was busy. Wagons rolled past. people walked with purpose. Molly smiled. This was her town now, hers and Josiah's. She heard him stir behind her.
Good morning.
Good morning.
He sat up and rubbed his face.
Did you sleep?
Better than I have in years.
Me too.
They dressed and went downstairs. The landlady had breakfast ready. Eggs and bacon and fresh bread. They ate quickly and then walked to the shop together. Molly had 3 orders to finish, and Josiah had horses to tend. They parted at the corner with a kiss.
I will see you tonight.
I will be here.
Molly worked through the morning, her hands steady and sure. She finished a dress for the schoolteacher and started on a shirt for the blacksmith. Around midday, Emma Calloway came in with Daniel. The boy looked healthy and bright-eyed. He ran to Molly and hugged her. Daniel thanked her for helping find him. Molly knelt down and hugged him back.
You are very brave, Daniel.
Emma stood by the door, smiling. She ordered a new dress and asked Molly if she would make it in time for Christmas. Molly promised she would. After they left, Molly worked for another hour. Then the deputy came in. He looked serious. He told her the circuit judge had arrived early, and the trial for Basil Lockhart would be held the next day. He asked if she and Josiah would testify. Molly said they would. The deputy thanked her and left. Molly closed the shop and went to find Josiah. He was at the livery, shoeing a horse. She told him about the trial.
It will be over soon.
I know. I just want it finished.
It will be. And then we move forward.
The next day they went to the courthouse, a small building next to the church. The courtroom was packed. Basil sat at the defendant's table, his face hard and angry. The judge was an older man with gray hair and a stern expression. The trial lasted 3 hours. Molly and Josiah both testified. They presented the papers, the telegram, the evidence of faulty ammunition. Witnesses spoke about the accidents and the deaths. Basil's lawyer tried to discredit them, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge deliberated for less than 10 minutes. He found Basil guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to manslaughter. He sentenced him to 20 years in the territorial prison. Basil shouted and cursed as they led him away. Molly felt nothing but relief. Outside the courthouse, people congratulated them. The deputy shook their hands. Emma hugged Molly and thanked her again. Josiah and Molly walked back to the boarding house slowly. The air was cold, but the sun was bright.
It is really over.
It is.
What do we do now?
We live.
Molly smiled. They spent the rest of the day together, walking through town, talking to people, making plans. That evening they went back to the river. The water was icy now, the banks lined with frost. They stood close together, watching the sun set.
I meant what I said. About building a house here.
I know.
I want to marry you, Molly. Properly. With a preacher and witnesses.
Yes.
Yes? She and the warned Randant Rekthing, one Souter said, they were place at the time. The warned the wind stas but that we year and luch coims. Or yes, with a lost lots mark Pogan. Yes, the waist bone frest in the teaching nine ties. The head had barred fire. They called it fire. The wind finally was pay for a Christ its walking.
Yes. I will marry you.
He laughed and picked her up, spinning her around. She shrieked and laughed. When he set her down, they were both grinning.
When?
Soon. Before Christmas.
That is less than 2 weeks.
Then, we better get started.
They kissed again, long and deep. The sky turned dark. The stars came out. They walked back to town hand in hand, their breath misting in the cold air. When they reached the boarding house, the landlady was waiting on the porch. She looked at them and smiled. She told them she had heard the news about the trial and congratulated them. Then, she asked if they needed help planning a wedding. Molly laughed and said yes. The landlady clapped her hands and said she would talk to the preacher first thing in the morning. Over the next 10 days, the town came together. The preacher agreed to perform the ceremony in the church. Emma offered to bake the cake. The blacksmith's wife offered to decorate. Molly sewed herself a new dress, simple and white with lace at the collar and cuffs. Josiah bought a new shirt and had his boots polished. On the morning of the wedding, Molly stood in her room and looked at herself in the small mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy, truly happy. There was a knock on the door. Emma came in with a bouquet of winter flowers, dried lavender and sprigs of pine. Emma hugged her and told her she looked beautiful. Molly's eyes filled with tears.
Thank you. For everything.
Emma smiled and squeezed her hand. They walked downstairs together. The landlady was waiting with a shawl. She draped it over Molly's shoulders and kissed her cheek. Then they walked to the church. The street was lined with people. Molly felt her heart swell. These were her people now, her community. Inside the church, the pews were full. Candles burned on every surface. The preacher stood at the front, smiling. And there, waiting at the altar, was Josiah. He wore his new shirt and his best vest. His hair was combed back. His eyes were bright. When he saw Molly, his face broke into a wide smile. She walked down the aisle slowly, her heart pounding. When she reached him, he took her hands.
I promise to stand with you, to protect you, to love you every day we have.
I promise to trust you, to choose you, to build this life together.
The preacher spoke the words. Josiah slipped a simple gold band onto Molly's finger. She did the same for him. Then, the preacher smiled and nodded.
May I kiss my wife?
Molly laughed, tears streaming down her face.
You may.
He kissed her gently, then deeper, and the church erupted in cheers. They walked back down the aisle hand in hand, and the townspeople followed them out into the cold December air. Outside, someone had hitched Josiah's horse to a small wagon decorated with ribbons. The crowd threw rice and dried flower petals. Josiah helped Molly up onto the wagon seat, then climbed up beside her. He took the reins and clicked his tongue. The horse started forward. They rode through town slowly, waving to everyone. When they reached the edge of town, Josiah turned the wagon toward the river. The sun was setting, casting long golden light across the frozen fields. They rode in silence, comfortable and complete. At the riverbank, Josiah stopped the wagon and helped Molly down. They stood together, looking back at Pine Hollow in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys. Lights flickered in windows.
Are you afraid?
No, not anymore.
Good.